Hey everybody, welcome for another edition of 10 Hammer Talks. This week is episode 3, entitled To an Opinion, and there will be a lot of those on this show. We've got some crazy topics, well not crazy, but they're, hot topics of things changing. Apologies about the delay there, we had a little bit of tech issues, just had some info changed up, we got it set, and everything is good now. So thank you for joining us, and I wanted to say today, this is the third episode we've been doing this. We had an introductory episode was one, and then last week's was 2. We're having a lot of fun with this show. We have past episodes that you guys can check out if you haven't seen yet. The first one's a great one to watch. It kind of introduces myself and Jeremy as regular hosts for you guys, so kind of gives you some background on us, and so you can see what perspectives the people talking to you about gaming topics are. So episode 2 last week, though, we touched on some interesting topics as well, and you guys can catch those here on our Twitch channel in the highlights and past broadcasts, or you guys, if you prefer YouTube, can go check that out on our YouTube channel. That is linked in the description. So thanks, you guys, and hope you will enjoy the show today.
Yeah, and also, just don't forget to check out 10tonhammer.com. The kind people who were nice enough to employ us and allow us to do these things for you. We got we're gonna say probably each week, but we got a bunch of content on there to keep up. The latest in news and online gaming, a bunch of features, editorials, some exclusives, interviews, all sorts of stuff, good videos. So definitely check out 10tonhammer.com and help support the people that keep us being able to do these kinds of things that we love to do. So for today, the big thing that I want to get into is the tendency people have to look at something and feel the need to react immediately and emotionally. And I think the lead into that topic, the most recent thing that I've seen, one of my current favorite games right now is Hearthstone. I've talked about it in the past. It's a fantastic card game. It's easy to get into, hard to master, which is kind of what you're looking for in a game like that. And the expansion, the Grand Tournament, is coming up next month. And by next month, I mean, any time from tomorrow on, probably not tomorrow, but, any time in August, it's going to be coming up. And they've revealed some cards. We've gotten about 30 out of over 130 cards. So we haven't seen a high percentage of it, less, just under a quarter of it, really. But as soon as a card is released, there are very strong opinions about it, and most of them have been negative. Now, I'm not going to say that I completely disagree with all of the negativity. For example, there is one card, and I should have it up for you guys. It's a Coliseum Manager. It's a 2/5 for 3 mana that has the new keyword Inspire, which any Inspire effects you have on your board will activate whenever you use your hero power. And its Inspire effect is return this minion to your hand. Is this card ever going to see play? Probably not, unless there's some synergy with other cards that haven't been released yet, which is a possibility. On its own, this card does not look good. No, I'm not going to say that it does. But the thing is that most of the set has not been revealed yet. And it's hard to just take one card completely out of context and say, oh, well, this card's definitely bad. Some cards by themselves are good, and they're good. I don't think there was ever a point where anybody looked at Dr. Boom just by itself and said, I don't know if this card's actually good. We knew that card was good. The card was always going to be good. It fits in a variety of decks. It's good on its own. It doesn't need any other cards to make it good. But it's clear that with these Inspire effects, they're looking to have synergy. They're looking to be used with other cards. So it's just interesting that as soon as something is revealed, and some cards that aren't as immediately, bad looking as Coliseum Manager have been revealed, and people are ready to, kind of dump all over them. And the same thing happened, though, with the previous expansion, Goblins vs. Gnomes. Some cards that came to be pretty good, people's initial reaction was, oh, this is terrible, it's never going to see play, blah, blah, blah. So just kind of, just using that to introduce it, but, I kind of want to get your thoughts on where you've seen it, too, where people just are much more interested in reacting right away than they are about, taking a step back and taking a moment to think about, something maybe in the grander scheme of things.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me because, we are in a day and age of very accessible internet. Social media, bigger now than it has ever been. Everybody's on Facebook expressing their opinions. Twitter, even people, even Twitter, which originally was kind of like a business type thing, even a lot of people are using it now just as, a form of social media to interconnect with their friends that they already have on Facebook or may not have. So, I mean, everybody's got these platforms and they're used to talking out to the internet and providing their opinion on something. And you start getting into the game field and stuff where you've got new expansions coming, you've got new things, and people have the accessibility and already have these things that they're used to using to just start throwing their opinions out there. So I think we're seeing a lot more immediate reactions to things than we used to in the past. Because from somebody who kind of followed beta projects and stuff on MMOs in the past, people always kind of did that too. They do it in the forums a little bit about things, expressing their opinions. But it seems like today, it has the ability to really get widespread fast. It's not people that are just only following that game necessarily that are catching what the people on the forums are talking about. Now it's like it gets out there on Twitter, somebody retweets it, or it's on Facebook, or friends are talking about it, and all of a sudden, somebody who has just a generally basic knowledge of Hearthstone and maybe plays it once in a while, has these, hears these opinions, and it starts to create this ripple effect, I think, in game communities. And not to say that, that's necessarily a bad thing. It's always interesting to get people's opinions. I know developers probably really value the feedback that they're getting so they can make changes to things, but the Hearthstone thing is really interesting because just the type of game it is and the game format. You're talking about a trading card game, a digital-based trading card game where all of these cards come out. They come out in a set. They're supposed to have, I don't know, for anybody that's not familiar with Hearthstone, trading card games like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, just about anything. There's a lot of them, but those are some of the popular ones. You get these sets that come out, and all of these things are intertwined with current cards that are out there and available, and also all the other cards in the set. So as somebody who played a lot of Magic the Gathering, this is something that's totally not a shocker to me. People, especially online nowadays, even with the handheld Magic the Gathering trading card games, you get people that are seeing the spoilers for upcoming Magic cards, and they'll knee-jerk about, oh, this is a terrible card, and then all of a sudden you get the full set and the card has a place, and it makes sense, and maybe it's not the best card, maybe it's a weak card in the deck, but it's kind of interesting. I actually think it's really interesting that Blizzard chose, I don't know the actual information on how people saw this card, if Blizzard actually unveiled it, I'm assuming. That it wasn't leaked. So if they did, then maybe they did it on purpose. Maybe they wanted people to, because I'm sure the people developing the card would know, hey, when people see this, they're not going to think that it's good. So maybe they're trying to spark some debate. Maybe it's a marketing tool. It's kind of interesting. That's one thing I've always found interesting about Blizzard itself. They're in such a huge position. They've got people that really market their products well, so I wouldn't be surprised if they intentionally did it knowing people would knee-jerk, because they have their World of Warcraft audience, which also knee-jerks at every little change and wrinkle in World of Warcraft. So but yeah, it's really interesting to me that social media has changed the way people are talking about these things and how quick it's getting out. And then obviously with trading card games, it's always really interesting because things are not always as they appear, especially if you don't have the knowledge of all the rest of the set. So really interesting stuff. But yeah, just looking at that base card itself, I wouldn't say that I could see it synergizing with anything off the top of my head in the game, but hopefully it'll find a place. I can think of some Magic cards that were like that when they released, just okay, this is nothing, and then you find maybe one or two cards that just make an amazing combo, and all of a sudden it has value to somebody out there. So interesting.
And I think you brought up a good point too, is that since it is Blizzard's decision on when to reveal these cards, I feel like there is probably some strategy behind that, and I think you're right. They probably are aware that at first glance this card does not appear useful. So I think it's a good point that they could be doing that on purpose, because it doesn't actually serve them well to reveal the top 5 best cards in the set right away, and then everything else that you ever see is, disappointing by comparison. They want to try to build up some interest in, hey, look, here's this card that looks really bad. Aren't you interested to find out how it might be good? So I think that is a good strategy. What I always found interesting, I completely agree, this card does not look good, so let's talk about it. What I always found interesting, and I see it as both a positive and a negative, is the level of, I guess, emotional intensity that goes behind the debates, because people will respond, like, when they see a card like this, like, you just threatened to kill their firstborn. And I think it's good in that it's good that people care that much about the game, that, it means that much to them, and that's good because that helps, for the long-term health of the game and long-term sustainability, that people do care that much. However, there's also, the idea of, it's probably unhealthy to get that stressed over, one card that was revealed. So it's an interesting dynamic in that it's a good sign that people do care that much about the game, but it also kind of stifles, I think, intelligent discussion. Because once, you're super emotionally invested in something, it's not so easy to just, take a step back and, say, all right, well, let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so...
It really, to me, it kind of leads into a deeper topic and a deeper issue of, the way things go these days with just what you're talking about. People get emotionally charged, and all of a sudden, any of the good discussion or good feedback that developers might get from things starts getting, buried, or, even people don't even think to start talking intelligently anymore. They've just, it just turns into a battle on the forums or something.
Right,
so
exactly.
I think that this starts leading to a deeper issue of player responses and how, talking about these things early, or getting early previews, like, can it, sometimes can it be a negative? Because player reactions, these knee-jerks, I'm sure there's a method to the madness. Maybe Blizzard is putting low, doing, I don't know, setting the bar low or something, or, dangling a little bit. I know World of Warcraft, they kind of try to slowly ramp up. They're actually really good about not revealing the juiciest parts about things until the end, so they kind of just build up for their players. So they do a good job of that. I can see a little bit of that in this, but at the same time, you're talking about a game that's still fairly new, probably still has a ton of room for growth online as far as getting new players interested and involved.
For sure.
And having this type of negative knee-jerk reaction, somebody that doesn't know too much about the game, maybe they're stumbling into the forums because they're like, I don't want to play the game until I read a little bit about it. And they see this battle going on over it. Maybe they're like, oh, this game isn't being balanced well. I'm a Magic player. I'm not gonna get into it. So it kind of makes you wonder. Like, I see their method in it, but you wonder how much negative there is to allowing for this early feedback that can oftentimes be extremely negative towards the game or the particular product that you're trying to sell. So it's a hard balance to do, I think. I'm glad I'm not a developer in that respect. We just get to report on what the news is and say whether we like it or not. We don't have to worry about how we're planning to roll out expansions or patches or things like that.
I think it's tough because on the one hand, like, if you are looking, am I interested in whatever game, whether it be Hearthstone or any other game, you do kind of look to see what the community's perceptions of the game is, but then at the same time, you have to realize that that's not always going to give you an accurate thing, because the people that care the most about the game are going to be the ones that are talking, most negatively about it, because they're the ones that care the most. So you could almost go in and say, oh my god, everybody who plays this game hates it, I don't want to play this game. But they actually love the game, but because they love it and are so invested in it, they're going to, be the most negative and, the harshest critics of it. So it actually makes it really, I think, difficult for a new player who's considering getting into any game, regardless of genre, to really figure that out based on, the community. And I think that creates a really interesting conundrum, both for new players and for developers. Like, all right, well, if we give them this information, what are they going to do with it, and how is that going to, affect anyone else who's looking to come into it. So I think that's a good point that you bring up, exactly how that does affect the new player experience and whether they decide to, even try the game or not because of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually, too, it kind of rolls into, like, our next big topic. I've kind of long been talking about it over the past few months, early access, really because of all the time I spent covering Landmark and it being in early access and then dabbling in other games. And, early access is this thing that's just becoming really commonplace, especially if you are a big Steam user, the Steam Early Access program, Greenlight, and all that stuff. This is becoming a thing that people are just engaging in, and it's doing, just like this Hearthstone kind of card reveal, it's the same thing but on a much deeper level. It'd be like if Hearthstone was giving players, allowing them to put these decks or these cards as they were revealed into decks before the expansion's finally revealed, kind of, that's the closest analogy. But anyways, the whole I guess topic for that is moving from just Hearthstone specific, but into early access in general and having this early negative feedback that could potentially be harmful for your game. And like you were saying, Jeremy, the people that are talking about this at first, that are in these forums, that are in, actually looking at the cards before the set comes, and that are in an early access game, before it launches, these are the kind of people that will be the most critical of your game because they're the most interested in it. They're investing their time into it. There's a lot more on the table for them. So, this has been a thing that I've had issues with early access because developers are looking at it as, kind of like a way of making some extra money to help develop, funding development and stuff like that, where, there's so many drawbacks to doing early access and opening the door to this negative feedback. You start getting a negative community reaction, you start turning players away from your game. And the one hidden downside I really see, and I'd be interested to hear what you think, Jeremy, is you have your core audience that's following the game, prior to launch. You have this core passionate audience that typically are your evangelists for your game, They're the ones who are going to be like talking to their friends, hey, you should play this game, it's so great, it's the best thing in the world. They're so immersed in it. Now, you have those people following. When you bring out an early access program, they don't have to buy it, obviously, but, they're so into it, they're going to buy it. It's, it's like 90% of the people following your game before launch are probably going to buy an early access, especially if there's perks that they get for doing so. So you take this, and all of a sudden you have your core passionate audience in there well before the game is complete, or in a finalized state, or even launches. And then how many of these core evangelists, potential core evangelists that you would normally have, how many of them are you burning out before your game has even launched? And then how much does that hurt your critical mass at launch? So it's something that has always struck me as a huge concern. I think developers should be a lot more careful with early access and when they use it and how they use it, having a much more complete game before they decide to do early access, because I feel like it's so flippant these days that it's just really harming each individual game, which, collectively, the more games that do this, how harmful is it to the industry as a whole to have, this type of, this type of environment where you're just getting these games before they're done, and, people get burnt out really quick and they're hopping between games. Like, for games that require persistence, like an MMO specifically, that requires a lot of persistent community and, some interaction there, it's extremely detrimental for those types of games. So it just makes me wonder, I wonder what other people's thoughts are about this early access. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Why do you like it? Or why don't you? Those kind of things. So what do you think, Jeremy? Have you been in any early accesses or participated in anything similar to that?
I haven't much, but I think one of the main questions with early access, and different developers will go about it different ways, and actually looking at our chat here, and Saga Lucimiak brings up kind of the point that I wanted to make already, is I think one of the big questions is how far into the project are you allowing early access? Because some of the games, if you're allowing early access before the game is even really there, and that does happen sometimes, then you wonder, with it being so early in the development process, is there enough here to even really make, to really form a solid opinion? So obviously the game isn't going to be done, otherwise it's not early access, but when everything is, a placeholder graphic, and just trust us, there's going to be content here, and there's nothing to really evaluate. I think at that point, developers are probably hurting themselves more than they're helping themselves. Um, but, as you're saying, if it's enough that you can at least get an idea of what the game is about, then I think it can be good, because then people can get excited for it. And if you do it too late, again, as was brought up in chat here, if you do it too late, then there's the risk of, well, I've already seen everything there is to see, so so there's no reason to be a long time consumer of the game. So I think timing is really critically important. I think more so than whatever perks may be offered for doing early access, because if you're really excited about a game, sometimes just being able to see it early and feeling like you're a part of that development process can be reward enough. Mm-hmm. So I mean, perks are nice and all that, but I don't think that's really the point. It's a very delicate balance, I think, about the timing of when you're letting people in. I've said too early, and there's nothing there for them to really care about, and too late, and you're already pretty much giving them the game, and they're gonna get their fill before the game even goes live, or not long after. So I think that's really the critical balance that developers have to strike, is to have enough there for people to care about the game, but enough coming that they can still be excited, for the future of it. And I think that's really something that a lot of developers have gotten wrong. Like, you've seen, I mean, how many times have you seen, yeah, we got early access and we couldn't really do anything in the game. Everything was placeholder, everything was upcoming, And I think that's really the critical balance. So if developers look at it less as, hey, we've, we just, want you to come in and, hope, or, we actually have something for you, but, here's why you should be excited for the future. I think that's really the important part. There's always going to be people, that feel differently, obviously. This is just my opinion. Some people might want to get in on the ground floor when there's not much there, so they can feel like they're there, from step one all the way through. Some people might not be that interested. They want to know, they want to have a really good idea of what the game is before deciding, how much they care about it. But I think striking that balance and if nothing else, communicating, to your player community of exactly where things are right now and what they should expect for the future helps. Because if you just give them nothing and don't say anything, then why should anybody care, So it's really, I think that's what it comes down to, is timing and communication with your audience.
Yeah, I agree. And based off of your response to it, made me think of a couple other things directly tying into this, which is, when you're doing an early access program that has a buy-in, there's no type of beta drawing or anything that's controlled. It's really just, hey, whoever has the money to pay can pay, and whoever's interested can be in. The problem there is that people that have a lot of extra money, are just going to buy it just to play it early, or just to see it early, maybe without any knowledge of what they're getting into. And that's kind of dangerous too, because these people that have this extra money, that are just trying your game and not really paying attention to what it's going to eventually be, they're just, stopping by. They're the people that could be spending a lot of money on your game and maybe getting the most negative opinion of it because they're not following everything closely, which I think ties directly into also those players specifically that are getting that type of experience where they're just kind of stumbling in and they don't like it, and they don't know they don't know what it's supposed to be like, so they have no context of how complete it is. Ties a lot into the other major kind of downside to this, which is there's no industry standards for early access whatsoever. I played a game called Windward, which I played it, I want to say, like 5-6 months before launch in its early access, and it was better than tons of complete launch games I'd played. It was so polished, it was running great, and when you play a game like that, all of a sudden it changes your standards of what you're expecting from early access. So when you go into another game that maybe is a lot, not nearly as far as long, and maybe it's only 3 months before launch or something, the intended launch, now it's like it starts to get in this area of like, if there's all these different variables, people are going to be even more off the board with their expectations, coming into an early access game prior to launch. So definitely a lot of negatives working against developers for early access. I don't by any means think that early access is a bad thing. I think it is great and can be used as a great tool for development, for feedback from players, especially your hardcore audience. But developers definitely need to be careful. And Saga of Leucemia talking a lot in the chat about what they're doing with their game. They actually are developing an online MMO that's very group-centric, very social-based. There's not going to be, I believe that one of their things is it's not going to have any solo content in it. I mean, you will be able to solo some things, but they're not going to make that the game to cater towards solo play. So it's really going to be about group play. Really interesting. But, you know, they're a developer that is looking at early access, obviously, and likes it. And it's important for developers, you know, to kind of do what they're doing and pay attention to, you know, the risks. There's definitely so many risks, and I think not all developers are paying attention to it. Especially a lot of indie developers that are just trying to get their name out there. You know, they're doing whatever they can. You definitely have to be careful about it and only use it when you need it or when it should be. So, but not to continue beating a dead horse on early access for anybody that's read I think I've written a couple articles on it, but some big concerns. But at the same time, you know, it can be a very good thing for the gaming industry, just if it's used well. So,
right.
But yeah. I think that brings us kind of into our next topic, which is really ties into it as well, into this whole idea of when you're going to design a game and you're going to try to monetize it. I mean, developers use early access to help monetize some of the development in ways, depending on how aggressive they get with their, you know, buy-in. I know Landmark offered up to $100 buy-ins. What is it? Star Citizen has some ridiculous ones, like you can spend $1,000 buying into a game that's not complete. It's just mind-blowing. So it kind of ties into monetization of games, early access does, but more importantly, I kind of wanted to talk about game design and monetization, where, you know, I kind of wrote an article today basically that was not necessarily attacking free-to-play, but showing that there are some negatives to free-to-play for MMORPGs because of the type of game they are and the traditional model that most use, the WoW clone, if you will, even though they're not all WoW clones, but typically it's the same model that's been used since the original EverQuest. EverQuest used it, EverQuest 2, World of Warcraft has continued to streamline the type of, you know, basically what it is a static, I don't know, developer-created content that gets released in certain intervals. So it's this type of format, which, you know, if you have a free-to-play model, generally what you're selling to players is accelerants to get rid of some of the grind and all that, which is really counterintuitive to having enough content for players between patches, which is what makes them bored and leave. So, you know, you're kind of like, your model's built on actually making your game harder to develop. So it's, I don't know, that's the interesting negative I had. I don't know if you've thought about it at all, Jeremy. I know MMOs is kind of more my realm, but I know there's some great successful free-to-play MMOs. DCUO is one that I loved. But free-to-play, you know, it's not bad. The MOBA genre in specific, it's been amazing for that game format. Sure. It fits very well with. They're selling aesthetics. They're selling some acceleration, but really the acceleration they're selling is not impactful to the competitive layer of the game too much. You know, you're still able to be competitive with a few champions or heroes.
And I think that's really the main point, is what I think the difference is between, say, you know, free-to-play in a MOBA and free-to-play in an MMO is that, as you're saying, the free-to-play, or what you can pay for in a MOBA, isn't trying to open up a gate that is otherwise incredibly difficult to get through. It, you know, might accelerate you a bit, and, like, let's say, you know, if I'm trying to level up my account, you know, I can level up faster, but it's nothing that I can't do, you know, with a little bit more time for free. You know, and if I want to unlock a champion, I can unlock every champion in the game for free. You know, everything can be done for free. A lot of the pay-to-play is purely aesthetic, you know, or slightly increasing the rate at which I can get to where I want to go, but it's not so much so, you know, that it's unfair, so to speak, you know, compared to a free-to-play game. Whereas, you know, and I was reading through your column, and yeah, you certainly spend more time with MMOs than I do, but I like to educate myself, you know, and there's, you know, certainly games out there that are asking you, you know, here's this gate, can you get through it for free? Maybe, but good luck, you know. you're going to spend so much time. But hey, if you want to pay for it, don't worry about it. You can just skip past this. And that is where it does create a huge divide between the paying players and the free to play players.
Yeah.
And it can be very unhealthy for the environment.
Yeah, in MMOs a lot, a lot of the things that people play for is, server firsts, achievements, getting to things, and obviously, I think too in the competitive nature of things, when you're a paying player, you're getting through content so much faster. You really have access to a lot more options of gear and other things, that are extremely relevant to your impact in a competitive environment, or even a competitive PvE environment, where it's much more harmful to the community of the game than it is for, say, a MOBA. So I really think that, one of the key differences between MOBAs and MMORPGs, at least right now, is the content. In a MOBA, the content is dynamic. It's player-based. Players are the content for each other. It's a constantly evolving landscape. They add one new champion, hero, or item, and it shakes up the whole realm. This content is always evolving, even though it's the same map all the time. It changes so much more than, say, an MMO, where the world is constantly changing and expanding. But the content is actually very static. It doesn't change. That's why people are consuming it. It's very consumption based, and I think that's the key difference. And when you're kind of really, time is money, is what it is. It all boils down to. So if you're a free to play thing, you're still trying to make your money by selling players time, is what you're doing, to some extent you're doing that in a MOBA, I would say, but it just doesn't have the type of impact on the gameplay as it does in an MMORPG. So I've always kind of thought there's this huge difference, and the other big offset that I kind of talked about in my article is you get towards the end of this, not towards the end, but you have this free to play, I don't know, mindset that's out there now. There's a lot of crossover between MMORPGs and MOBAs. Like, I'm a big MMO fan. I play a lot of League of Legends. I even play some Smite. I play Heroes of the Storm. I like MOBAs just as much as I like MMORPGs because the competitive environment is much more fun than an MMORPG's competitive environment for PvP. So, but anyways, I think you're getting a lot of this crossover because of the PC gaming and online social nature of both of these genres. And now you have this free-to-play mindset in players where anytime you start seeing a game that's subscription only, like a Final Fantasy XIV or Elder Scrolls for a time, and a lot of these games that are actually moving towards free-to-play now because they have to survive, it's just the whole environment is free-to-play. So the interesting question there is, how do you design a game that's built for free-to-play players that offers the MMORPG experience? So it's that's one thing that's really intrigued me over the past few months. I've been watching some games in development and growing more unhappy with the games that are out there just because I see how much free to play is kind of eroding the experience of these games. So it's a big thing for me. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Jeremy, on that's a bit of a deeper topic, but I apparently packed a little too much today.
A little tough. Yeah. Well, let's look at it this way, because we've kind of established what our concerns are. So for those who haven't read your column yet, you had some thoughts on actually what can be the future of these, that games don't have to completely overhaul the way they want to do things, but can still accommodate both types of players. So I think it'd actually be good to kind of talk about that. So what was your you gave an example of a possible way to kind of fix that issue.
Yeah, well, to me, it just kind of stumbled across me. Like, I didn't even think of it really, but a game I've been following that is still early out in development, but Ilphonic, who's working on some stuff for Star Citizen, they're actually developing an in-house MMORPG called Revival. Well, actually, they're calling it Multiplayer Evolving Online World. They don't want to call it an MMORPG because it has a really negative stigma right now. Anyways, they kind of have this idea where they're going to create the game and they're actually going to have a free-to-play and a subscription, and actually the way that they're deploying this, or the way they're intending to do this, the games will actually be a lot they'll be significantly different. It's not just everybody playing in the same place, and free-to-play players are playing for free at a disadvantage to pay-to-play players that, creates that pay-to-win environment. In Revival, the goal is that they'll have free-to-play servers and subscription servers, which is kind of akin to the old EverQuest Gold servers, but back then EverQuest was subscription all the time, and you just paid a bigger subscription for Gold servers. But the Gold servers offered live GMs and stuff like that, and that's exactly what Revival's doing. They're actually going to have live storytelling GMs and people, developers manipulating the game and creating content in real time with the players, and then the free-to-play players will be playing the game with just AI-run content creation, because the world's going to be dynamic. It's not going to be the static content created that we've seen. The world's going to create its own content, kind of like MOBAs do and like trading card games do, which were both topics today's. But yeah, we actually, if you guys want to learn more about that game specifically and how it's going to be handling monetization and other things, that's actually our next episode next week. We will be having a developer on from Revival. Adam Maxwell, otherwise known as Snipe Hunter, will be joining us next week to talk about, we're going to get some topics. It's not going to be only about Revival. He's a really great mind as far as systems design goes. They're doing a lot of innovative stuff with that. So if you have any interest at all in systems, mechanics, or Revival, or anything MMORPG, next week will be a big episode where we're talking about that type of stuff, and we'll of course always have some other stuff thrown in there, and Adam will be giving his opinion on these things too. He's a long-time industry veteran, so it'll be a great, instead of just hearing me and Jeremy talk, you'll get a third person, and hopefully you guys will get some different perspectives in there, and not just hearing me and Jeremy talk about our opinions on it. But yeah, that's kind of next week's plan. This week, Jeremy, did you have any other important news you had going on this week? Some articles you want to mention, or some stuff that you're planning for next week's content you wanted to share?
Not really. Next week's actually going to be a very Heroes of the Storm centric week for me, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. We have a bunch of guides for different heroes that are actually getting updated in a brand new and pretty format. So I'm actually doing a lot of that.
So much better.
So yeah, a lot of Heroes of the Storm stuff for me, and of course, as we learn more about the Hearthstone expansion, of course, we'll be getting a little bit more in as well. But yeah, be very, very Heroes focused for the coming week, so it's going to be exciting for me.
One really interesting thing, I don't know if you saw this week, did you see the whole Gangplank lore thing for League of Legends? Where
yes.
Killed off and disabled? What did you think of that,
yeah.
real quick?
Well, see, it's interesting, because it's the first time, I think, ever that League of Legends lore has actually affected the game. Of course, for those concerned, Gangplank will not be disabled, forever. He's not just out of the game. Now, they did just give a rework to the champion. They're not, okay, we reworked him, now he's gone forever. So he's going to come back in one way or another, I'm sure. What's actually really weird about it is that former LCS player Wicked was talking about it earlier, that he's not disabled in the Challenger Series. So he's disabled in-game, but for competitive play, he's still available, which makes things really, really weird. I'm not sure exactly what Riot's plan was with that. So
I've got theories. As somebody who's been talking heavily on Theory Forge about game design and theories, MOBAs, the one problem they run into is champion bloat, I would say, is the best way to explain it. You have players that are playing Heroes of the Storm instead of League of Legends nowadays. Players, coming in new to MOBAs, because League of Legends is just, heavy. It's got so many champions now. There's so much to learn. I'm looking at Gangplank as the test, this whole thing being the test bed for having lore, the actual game lore, which not a lot of people read. They're going to be able to tie that in and get people even more involved in their game by using lore to actually have champion lockouts, to where, for a week or a couple weeks or a month, maybe you have 6, 7, 10 champions even that are totally locked out from play, to kind of narrow the window for new players. They have less champions to learn, whereas at the same time, you still have a ton of options, still 80-something options or whatever, for players, and it also will force those players that like, hey, this is my champion, I love him, I'm going to play him 24/7 all the time. You have these players where their champion will get locked, but maybe they love the game so much that now they're actually going to start branching out and learning more about the game and actually improving their whole gameplay experience from just, always having a hit or miss with their one champion. So that's my theory, is what I think is going to be happening in the future at some point, but don't quote me on that because I'm not sure what Riot's doing. But I think they're bold. They're a bold company.
For sure.
Yeah, I think they've got some plans behind it for sure. So, yeah, there was that. Sorry, I had to bring it up. I just thought it would be an interesting topic as well. But yeah, for me next week, I'm not sure yet. I'm kind of going off the news with things. I'm really I know I said it last week, I'm really just waiting for Revival to, they should be dropping their client very soon, at least the housing element of it, so that players can get in and start exploring their own personal houses and the art style and theme. So it's going to be something I'm looking to see how well they used Unity. I'm sorry, Unreal. Was it Unity? I know they switched to from a different. Oh, it was CryEngine to Unreal 4. So I want to see how well they're using Unreal 4 to accomplish this MMO. It's a really, with Unity and Unreal 4 both giving really cheap options for developers and even indie developers to use them for developing games. I'm interested to see how much it boosts the quality of content for a game that may be getting built with a much smaller budget than like your average AAA MMO that has its own system built for it, its own game engine built for it. So,
right.
But yeah, that's what I'm watching for this week. So look for a lot of Revival stuff out of me. I may be hitting that a little bit more than usual this week, and then of course waiting for the H1Z1 Professions, and they started a new workshop in Landmark. Landmark for EverQuest Next with the Barbarians, the Holossians. So that's an interesting new thing I'll be following. But other than that, I think that's mostly it for us. Of course, as always, we are part of 10tonhammer.com, the website where it's really the majority is written content, a lot of guides, a lot of great guides, as Jeremy said, improving. We've got our forums back now recently. Go check those out and contribute. I've been contributing to all the discussions I can see that I have time for. So they're starting to flower there. Go check them out. Get involved in the discussions. Other than that, support us. Support us at 10 Ton Hammer. There's links for that there. You can support us directly through Patreon, or you can, support us by just visiting the site, reading through articles. We still do get some ad revenue, so that is a way that we get funded. So read our stuff, if you like it. If you like this show, then you probably like reading our content as well.
Hopefully.
So hopefully. But we want to thank you guys for coming today. And Jeremy, any last thoughts?
No, I'd just like to say that I really appreciate the interaction through Twitch chat. This has been the most we've had so far. It's only our third episode, so of course, it's going to take a bit, but we really appreciate you guys coming on. We definitely love hearing your opinions about stuff, and we can only, talk so much about a topic. It really is. That's part of why we like doing it as a live stream. Is we'd like to, be able to talk with you guys and hear your thoughts. So really appreciate everybody who's coming and hang out. Hopefully we can get more people. And just let your friends know. This is never going to be we talk and you listen. It's always going to be an interaction as much as we possibly can. You guys should be as much a part of the show as we are. We're going to bring up the topics and talk about them, but we love hearing what you guys have to say as well. So really appreciate you guys coming down and hanging out with us. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I second that too. A few familiar faces, Dorkish, Totem, Saga of Leucemia, thank you guys for coming in and chatting. Also, too, I think I mentioned on past episodes, in the future there will be opportunities for, some of our regular guests to actually be on the show with us on cam talking and discussing these things. And then, of course, as our audience gets bigger, we're going to actually implement a Q&A feature live into the show where, the last few minutes of the show, 10, 15, depending on how big it gets, having a Q&A session where you guys can ask questions in the audience and we'll be talking about them live on the show instead of, you just having a side discussion while we're talking about our topics. So we're going to integrate more of this as the show goes on and grows. So, but thank you guys for coming today and listening to us mostly talk. But the discussion has been great. We've been catching what we can in between the two of us talking. So But thank you guys, and we hope to see you for next week's show. So we'll have Revival developer on there, Snipe Hunter, as I said, Adam Maxwell. So look forward to him next week, same time, same place, Friday at 3 p.m. We'll be on time next week. We just had some tech issues this week, so but we got those taken care of. But thanks you guys for coming, and we will catch you all next week.
All right, thanks, guys.